out this morning." M. Lenormand turned to the commissary of police. "How many men have you with you, Monsieur le Commissaire?" "4." "That's not sufficient. Telephone to your secretary to send you all the men available. And please be so good as yourself to organize the closest watch at every outlet. The state of siege, Monsieur le Commissaire." "But I say," protested the manager, "my customers. I don't care a hang, sir, for your customers. My duty comes before everything, and my duty is at all costs to arrest." "So you believe ..." the examining magistrate ventured to interpolate. "I don't believe, monsieur, I am sure that the perpetrator of both the murders is still in the hotel." "But then Chapman ..." "At this moment, I cannot guarantee that Chapman is still alive. In any case, it is only a question of minutes, of seconds. Gourel, take 2 men and search all the rooms on the 4th floor. Mr. Manager, send one of your clerks with them. As for the other floors, I shall proceed as soon as we are reinforced. Come, Gourel, off with you, and keep your eyes open. It's big game you're hunting." Gourel and his men hurried away. M. Lenormand himself remained in the hall, near the office. This time, he did not think of sitting down, as his custom was. He walked from the main entrance to the door in the Rue Orvieto and returned to the point from which he had started. At intervals, he gave instructions: "Mr. Manager, see that the kitchens are watched. They may try to escape that way. Mr. Manager, instruct your young lady at the telephone not to put any of the people in the hotel into communication with outside subscribers. If a call comes from the outside, she can connect the caller with the person asked for, but she must take a note of that person's name. Mr. Manager, have a list made out of all your visitors whose name begins with an L or an M." The tension caught the spectators by the throat, as they stood clustered in the middle of the hall, silent and gasping for breath, shaking with fear at the least sound, obsessed by the infernal image of the murderer. Where was he hiding? Would he show himself? Was he not one of themselves? This one, perhaps? Or that one? And all eyes were turned on the gray-haired gentleman in spectacles, an olive-green frock-coat and a maroon-colored neckerchief, who was walking about, with his bent back, on a pair of shaky legs. At times, one of the waiters accompanying Sergeant Gourel on his search would come running up. "Any news?" asked M. Lenormand. "No, sir, we've found nothing." The manager made 2 attempts to induce him to relax his orders regarding the doors. The situation was becoming intolerable. The office was filled with loudly protesting visitors, who had business outside or who had arranged to leave Paris. "I don't care a hang," said M. Lenormand again. "But I know them all." "I congratulate you." "You are exceeding your powers." "I know." "The law will decide against you." "I'm convinced of that." "Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction himself." "M. Formerie had better not interfere. He can mind his own business, which is to examine the servants, as he is doing now. Besides, it has nothing to do with the examining magistrate, it has to do with the police. It's my affair." Just then a squad of police burst into the hotel. The chief detective divided them into several sections which he sent up to the 3rd floor. Then, addressing the commissary of police: "My dear commissary, I leave the task of watching the doors to you. No weakness, I entreat you. I will take the responsibility for anything that happens." And, turning to the lift, he had himself conveyed to the 2nd floor. It was a difficult business and a long one, for they had to open the doors of the 60 bedrooms, to inspect all the bathrooms, all the recesses, all the cupboards, every nook and corner. And it was also fruitless. An hour later, on the stroke of 12, M. Lenormand had just done the 2nd floor. The other parties had not yet finished the upper floors; and no discovery had been made. M. Lenormand hesitated. Had the murderer retreated to the attics? He was deciding, however, to go downstairs, when he was told that Mrs. Kesselbach had just arrived with her lady companion. Edwards, the old confidential manservant, had accepted the task of informing her of Mr. Kesselbach's death. M. Lenormand found her in one of the drawing-rooms, overcome by the unexpected shock, dry-eyed, but with her features wrung with grief and her body trembling all over, as though convulsed with fever. She was a rather tall, dark woman, and her black and exceedingly beautiful eyes were filled with gold, with little gold spots, like spangles gleaming in the dark. Her husband had met her in Holland, where Dolores was born of an old family of Spanish origin, the Amontis. He fell in love with her at first sight; and for 4 years the harmony between them, built up of mutual affection and devotion, had never been interrupted. M. Lenormand introduced himself. She looked at him without replying; and he was silent, for she did not appear, in her stupor, to understand what he said. Then, suddenly, she began to shed copious tears, and asked to be taken to her husband. In the hall, M. Lenormand found Gourel, who was looking for him and who rushed at him with a hat which he held in his hand. I picked this up, chief. There's no doubt whom it belongs to, is there?" It was a soft, black felt hat and resembled the description given. There was no lining or label inside it. "Where did you pick it up?" "On the second floor landing of the servants' staircase." "Nothing on the other floors?" "Nothing. We've searched everywhere. There is only the first floor left. And this hat shows that the man went down so far. We're burning, chief." "I think so." At the foot of the stairs, M. Lenormand stopped. "Go back to the commissary and give him my orders. He must post 2 men at the foot of each of the 4 staircases, revolver in hand. And they are to fire, if necessary. Understand this, Gourel: if Chapman is not saved and if the fellow escapes, it means my resignation. I've been wool gathering for over 2 hours." He went up the stairs. On the first floor he met 2 policemen leaving a bedroom, accompanied by a servant of the hotel. The passage was deserted. The hotel staff dared not venture into it. Some of the permanent visitors had locked themselves in their rooms; and the police had to knock for a long time and proclaim who they were before they could get the doors opened. Farther on, M. Lenormand saw another group of policemen searching the maids' pantry; and, at the end of a long passage, he saw some more men who were approaching the turning, that is to say, that part of the passage which contained the rooms overlooking the Rue de Judée. And, suddenly, he heard these men shouting and they disappeared at a run. He hurried after them. The policemen had stopped in the middle of the passage. At their feet, blocking their way, with its face on the carpet, lay a corpse. M. Lenormand bent down and took the lifeless head in his hands. "Chapman," he muttered. "He is dead." He examined the body. A white knitted silk muffler was tied round the neck. He undid it. Red stains appeared; and he saw that the muffler held a thick wad of cotton wool in position against the nape of the neck. The wad was soaked with blood. Once again there was the same little wound, clean, frank and pitiless. M. Formerie and the commissary were at once told and came hastening up. "No one gone out?" asked the chief detective. "No surprise?" "No," said the commissary. "There are 2 men on guard at the foot of each staircase." "Perhaps he has gone up again," said M. Formerie. "No, no." "But some one must have met him." "No. This all happened quite a long time ago. The hands are cold. The murder must have been committed almost immediately after the other, as soon as the 2 men came here by the servants' staircase." "But the body would have been seen. Think, 50 people must have passed this spot during the last 2 hours." "The body was not here." "Then where was it?" "Why, how can I tell?" snapped the chief detective. "Do as I'm doing. Look for yourself. You can't find things by talking." He furiously patted the knob of his stick with a twitching hand; and he stood there, with his eyes fixed on the body, silent and thoughtful. At last he spoke: "Monsieur le Commissaire, be so good as to have the victim taken to an empty room. Let them fetch the doctor. Mr. Manager, would you mind opening the doors of all the rooms on this passage for me?" On the left were 3 bedrooms and 2 sitting rooms, forming an empty suite, which M. Lenormand inspected. On the right were 4 bedrooms. 2 were occupied, respectively, by a M. Reverdat and an Italian, Baron Giacomini, who were both then out. In the 3rd room they found an elderly English maiden lady still in bed; and in the 4th an Englishman who was placidly reading and smoking and who had not been in the least disturbed by the noises in the passage. His name was Major Parbury. No amount of searching or questioning led to any result. The old maid had heard nothing before the exclamations of the policeman: no noise of a struggle, no cry of pain, no sound of quarrelling; and Major Parbury neither. Moreover, there was no suspicious clue found, no trace of blood, nothing to lead them to suppose that the unfortunate Chapman had been in one of those rooms. "It's queer," muttered the examining magistrate. "It's all very queer." And he confessed, ingenuously: "I feel more and more at sea. There is a whole series of circumstances that are partly beyond me. What do you make of it, M. Lenormand?" M. Lenormand was on the point of letting off one of those pointed rejoinders in which he was wont to give vent to his chronic ill temper, when Gourel appeared upon the scene, all out of breath. "Chief," he panted, "they found this downstairs, in the office, on a chair." It was a parcel of moderate dimensions, wrapped up in a piece of black serge. "Did they open it?" asked the chief. "Yes, but when they saw what the parcel contained, they did it up again exactly as it was, fastened very tight, as you can see." "Untie it." Gourel removed the wrapper and disclosed a black diagonal jacket and trousers, which had evidently been packed up in a hurry, as the creases in the cloth showed. In the middle was a towel, covered with blood, which had been dipped in water, in order, no doubt, to destroy the marks of the hands that had been wiped upon it.